FEMA developed the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, IPAWS, to meet the requirements for the alert system as specified by an executive order issued by President George W. Bush. The responsibility for the EAS is shared between the FCC, FEMA, and the National Weather Service. FEMA has extraordinary emergency powers. The FCC has the power to literally change our media landscape overnight, and they have shown that they are perfectly willing to do it without the consent of Congress. We didn't use this system on 9/11. It was in place, but it wasn't even activated. They didn't even try to activate it. Why? Because it wasn't necessary. Even when we had planes flying into buildings in 3 different cities, we didn't need it. We didn't need the White House to activate this and seize control of all of the airwaves to give official information. How did you get that official information? The broadcasters all across the networks, all across the countries, gave you the information. Do you remember when Bush updated the country from Barksdale Air Force Base? Everybody carried this. Remember this? Look how freaked out he looked. Everybody carried this. You didn't need to trip anything. Everybody wanted to hear what the president had to say. There's no need to seize the airwaves to give us information. We have the system already in place. But this is only under a national state of emergency. Under a national state of emergency, certain rights in the Constitution can be revoked. We've seen it before. Habeas corpus was suspended during the Civil War under Abraham Lincoln. This allowed Confederate sympathizers to be jailed without knowing why. Lincoln got a lot of heat for this, but don't worry. Like I said, it can only happen during a national emergency. Okay, so you're probably thinking we have to be careful, but at least we're not in the state of an emergency. And that is technically true. We're not in a state of national emergency. We are actually in the state of 22 national emergencies. Here they are. Western Balkans, the terrorism after 9/11 still, Iran, weapons of mass destruction, Ivory Coast, Zimbabwe, Burma. What? Russian Federation, transnational criminal organizations? Whoa, wait a minute. What was all that? I don't know about you, but I haven't been able to sleep at night ever since the Ivory Coast and Zimbabwe blocked property. That's the national emergency. Oh, and all those national emergencies that developed here after Zimbabwe blocked property with the Ivory Coast. If you even bring up the blocking of property going on in the Republic of Congo, I'm going to burst into tears. I'm so close to the edge about that national emergency. The National Emergencies Act was passed in 1976 to stop presidents from declaring open-ended periods of emergencies because people knew. The next 25 years, there were only 32 declared emergencies. I just told you about 22 in this year alone. Now, 14 of them were signed into law by George W. Bush and then renewed by President Obama. But he's also declared others, like this one. Quote, the actions of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, his government, and the close associates, including extreme measure against the people of Libya, constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security. The foreign policy of the United States. The order declares a national emergency to deal with this threat. Now, this president didn't even go on television to talk to us about this. I'm sorry, but you can't make the case that Gaddafi's action against the people of Libya constituted an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security of the United States. It's preposterous. And even one of Obama's own cabinet members agreed. Just a month after the president issued this national emergency, then Secretary Robert Gates had this to say.
Do you think Libya posed an actual or imminent threat to the United States?
No, it was not. It was not a vital national interest to the United States, but it was an interest.
With the possible exception of the terror-related threats, none of these seem like national emergencies. And since they've been declared, can the Patriot Act be invoked on behalf of, let's say, the Liberian property emergency? By the way, speaking of the Patriot Act, do you know who actually wrote it? I mean, it had to be George Bush, right? Or Karl Rove, Or Dick Cheney. Oh, Dick Cheney, he's so evil. Or Halliburton, right? Who actually wrote the Patriot Act? Most people don't know this. This man. Did you know that? Way back in 2001, then Senator Joe Biden was at a town hall meeting hosted by Bill Press and Tucker Carlson for CNN when the topic of wiretapping came up. And he said, quote, "In full disclosure, I wrote that bill. I'm not being facetious. I got a call from the Attorney General in '95 after the bombing in Oklahoma City. I drafted the bill as chairman of the Judiciary Committee and expanded a lot of these authorities. But none of the expansion relates to anything that will in any way jeopardize your civil liberties." The point is, with presidents, Republican and Democrat, signing and re-signing executive declarations of emergencies every 2 years, we as a nation are in a perpetual state of national emergency. And now with this updated, soon-to-be nationally tested EAS system that literally seizes control of all of the airwaves in this country for virtually any reason, and allows the government to keep it as long as they keep, quote, news and official information coming on, let's say, the obstruction of the implementation of the Dayton Accords in Bosnia, that national emergency. As long as they keep that coming, they can keep control of all of the airwaves. If that doesn't send a chill down your spine, you must be a politician, because you don't have a spine.
GBTV, the truth.